This is The Creative, a podcast of authentic discussion with industry pros.
And then it just keeps going all around.
Yeah, and now the traffic's down. It's quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks. My name is Russel Vargo, and my personal website is my full name, russellvargo.com, and my work website is crosswater.net. I'd like to make a plug on a product. If you
Totally. Hit it.
are into virtual reality, I work with a company called BroomX, and it's the first of its kind. It's a VR projector, and you can find them at BroomX.com.
Let's start with that, because I know the BroomX is really interesting. Give us a quick summary of this projector.
We found them in the beginning of 2018. We were looking for a solution for virtual reality that could be in a social environment and something that was not a headset. It's a fun product, because it's interactive, and
Mm-hmm.
you can play your video and watch it with your friends. You can change the perspective on it. Part of the reason we bought it is because you can create custom Unity applications for it. So it's not just like a passive experience. You can start to have input. And that's one thing that we needed as a company. We needed to create a solution that was specific to our clients.
Mm-hmm.
In our first use case, we're working with dementia and Alzheimer's patients, and we wanted to offer them the option of having jazz music or classical music, or if they want the ambient music, they can choose that. And in order to do that, we needed a custom Unity application. And so these are the types of things that we think are valuable. We've already integrated the Sennheiser Ambio soundbar. So when you rotate the video, if you have higher order ambisonic audio, it will rotate with the image.
Okay.
So as far as I'm aware, there's no one in the world that's begun really working in this realm except for BroomX, except for Sennheiser in this realm.
And the BroomX, again, it's almost like a capsule that sits in the corner of a room, and then everybody can hang out in a space, and it takes over the walls.
It projects around 200 degrees by, I think, 120, and it's projecting onto 3 walls in the ceiling. Generally, we have it in the back, in the middle of the room.
Back middle, okay.
Yeah, and its initial design was with hotels, and they had created a smell projector. They created a bed that would rotate with it, and it's for full immersive experiences. You can get education through the BroomX. You can get entertainment through it. We're using it for therapy, and that has a huge impact. There's a lot of people who are in need of some sort of entertainment, and if they're just sitting in their room all day, and once a week they have an opportunity to have their whole world transformed into some scenic landscape, then I think that's really cool. And somehow in the future, once all this research is validated, I think we're going to be seeing BroomX and other companies like that, offering these types of services for healthcare facilities, and also for entertainment. I mean, entertainment's probably, the biggest that everyone thinks of first, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, you can put this on a live show, or you could put this in home entertainment. They want to create a product that is small,
Mm-hmm.
for the home, that is consumer friendly in price as well.
Yeah, I bet watching like an outdoor adventure video on it, like motocross or like kayaking or something, would be really impressive if you get to like lay back and all over the walls.
Well, that's the thing. Like I mentioned, it was designed for the room in these hotels, and I've sat in my room for like 6 hours one time going through all the videos on the library. I was like, okay, I want to watch everything, and I want to see what it's like to just lay in bed and watch. And it was fascinating,
And like 360 video, like the typical VR, the typical VR kind of video that like we're used to, like with the GoPro stuff, or like the Gear VR things, those play back on this as well, right? Or close to?
Yes. So it's the same format that you would render in general for like Facebook or YouTube.
Because I think that's what's really exciting about this is that it's not only is it like really leading technology, but like the video cameras for it aren't some weird contraption. They're things that are already in the marketplace.
Yeah. A lot of people love headsets and they feel like it's an immersive experience and they're able to have full attention on whatever's in that headset. But a lot of people don't want to wear headsets, and a lot of people feel guarded when you put a headset on them. And a lot of people wear glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just much rather be in the world that I live in and then have it on the walls than put a headset on and feel like I'm disconnected.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is that you brought the BroomX to the Signal Art Show that we did a couple months ago, and we were able to take over an entire room there that was fairly large, and you were projecting a lot of material up there, and that's one of the things that I really liked about it, that, it's just, you could hang out with somebody and you could talk to them and you could have a conversational experience with video. Mm-hmm. And, in so many ways, like going to the movie theater, watching a movie feels like it's not really a community experience. You're just there in the blackness. And this is video that's very social because you get to sit there and talk about it.
Yeah. Projections and social entertainment, is the beginning of cinema, right? Mm-hmm. Like when people used to go to drive-thrus and, everyone was sitting there watching it together.
Drive-thru.
Yeah, and even in the classroom, right? You think about when you were a kid and the teacher would come in with the projector and turn it on and everyone's watching, and it's a great way to just have a community and come together. And for an artist like myself who makes 360 video, there hasn't been a tool to share it that was social. It's always been like, hey, put on this headset and make sure that you're not a germaphobe, which I am.
And then sit back and be silent and just watch this like detached body twitch its head around.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
I know.
You don't get to gauge the reaction. You're not part of the audience watching.
Yeah. And there's reasons for both, right? I imagine a lot of people, they need that focused, cut off experience, and they want to feel like they're actually more immersed. Like the first time I put on a headset, one of the first times that I remember, I went to Mars from an image from the rover. It was just a still image, but I felt like I was on Mars. I was like, whoa, this is incredible. And I've gone to a lot of other places in a headset, and you do feel like you're there. For VR, I was just at Tribeca last week, and everything there, for the most part, was in a headset. There were some people who had brought other components to make their activation more intriguing or more immersive. Felix and Paul were there, and they had done a 6-minute stop motion VR film. It took them 4 years, and it's just incredible. It's like, wow, how do you do stop motion in a 360 environment and keep it continuous? And
for 4 years, the tech changed so much in 4 years.
Yeah, but I guess they just had this set that they were able to lock off, and however long it took actually time on the set. It was a very small set where they filmed. All in all, it was just one gymnasium. That was fascinating to see that. And there was some people who had built this giant like tribal mask, and whenever you get into VR, you put on the Vive and then you put on this tribal mask. I said, what is that? She says, it's the weight of colonialism. I was like, okay. And you go through, and in this experience, all you're doing is like poisoning the environment everywhere you go. And at the end, the world just dies, and you're like, but it had great music, right?
Uh-huh.
And so that was a fun one. And there was like, oh man, actually my favorite piece here's where I thought the guys really hit the nail on the head. There's an artist out of Australia named Sutu, and he works a lot in the Vive, and he works with these kids, these Aboriginal kids. There's like 8 shipping containers in this community, and basically Sutu brings all this technology there and teaches them how to use it. And the piece was called Future Dreaming, and it was like, how do you see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 25 years from now, or something. And as they design this experience with their words, you see it being created in tilt brush in front of you. And then they did motion capture on their faces, and it was just a really cool piece. And like, all the kids flew in from Australia, and just good energy.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that we were there was a company called VR City and East City Films created a documentary called Common Ground, and it was about the Aylesbury estate in London, which has been slowly bought by the UK government. You know, they're offering these families basically, 15% of what the property's worth, and saying, hey, here's your money, you got to go. And so all these people are basically being kicked out of their homes, and it was a very low income community beforehand. And so these people can't afford to just move somewhere. They're having to move back to Africa or move back to somewhere they're not familiar, because the price of living has just caused them to leave.
Yeah.
Similar to Austin,
Yeah. And did you guys, this was a 360 documentary that you guys did, or
so
flat?
Darren and Ash, it was 360, it was photogrammetry, and they did some VR interactive stuff, and you could like spray paint on the building. And they went through hundreds of hours of stock footage from the past and told a story through the residents' eyes, from the conception of the building all the way until it was being torn down. So there was just a really well thought out documentary, and we were there with BroomX to project the environment onto the space, and then the people would come into the headset, and it was a VR experience. So there's ways to have both experiences come together.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So how did you guys do?
I was awesome, man. Everyone was like, whoa, this documentary is amazing. And like, some people were crying. I felt like we should have had tissues for people whenever they were, you watch this kid, he grew up in London and now he's living in Africa.
Yeah. That's amazing to move an audience that way with the technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a real, a real compassionate, heartfelt story. And I think that's, as a storyteller, we have all these technologies coming together, right? And so by using photogrammetry, by using VR, 360 video, they're able to tap into a whole new audience. Mm-hmm. The traditional media, it's not that it's not compelling, but traditional media can be shot simultaneous as immersive media. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of companies and storytellers using both. And you'll find that you can create a 30-second spot that you see on the commercial, and you can have an immersive documentary that has 2D elements, right? So it doesn't have to be 360 is full spherical video all the time. You're talking about immersive, then you have to mention volumetric. When you have video that's captured in volume, you can walk around the space. And actually, if you look at the NBA or the NFL, you already see a lot of these technologies.
Yeah.
Intel is using it, where you see the guy go up for the dunk. LeBron is midair and the camera swings around as he's dunking, and it's slow motion. It's basically like bullet time effect can be done with volume video. Those types of techniques.
Yeah. That's remarkable. that we've gotten that far.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. I mean, I remember playing like Atari and Pong. That was enough for me. Just like, I enjoyed that. And now we're, able to shake someone's hand with like a haptic glove in another part of the world, or even on another, someone in the space station.
Right.
Yeah,
those biofeedback clothes, like from Ready Player One.
I think Microsoft just came out with something.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be that far off as a piece of technology. It seems like we have all the bits and bobs that would make something like that work already in the marketplace. It's just somebody putting it together into useful clothing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. The key to all of it, though, is going to be accessibility.
Pouring water. The key to all of it is accessibility.
Yes. So allowing people to have these experiences, should be for everyone. Like, what am I trying to say? With technology right now, everything's dependent on cell phone. And as long as we're using cell phone technology, then we're able to share information globally. And I think with headsets, it's not necessarily going to be adopted globally in the same way. I just think that it's not necessarily the way to go for mass adoption for VR or AR.
Yeah, I always felt like kind of like an A+ bonus level of technology. Like, you need to have all sorts of other things in your life already. You kind of already need to know and kind of get your head around technology and what you need to have a purpose for it. Like, versus a phone where it's like, I can come up with 85 reasons I need a phone off the top of my head right away.
Yeah.
VR headset, it's like, well, are you already doing these 12 other things? And then does this take you to the next level?
Well, they had the Oculus Quest come out. It begins shipping, and I believe in the middle of this month or third week of this month, you'll be able to have an independent VR system. So there's going to be a lot of people that can, like, instead of having to buy a computer and be tethered to the computer, they're going to be able to just walk around and have VR. Now,
that makes a difference.
That's going to help the accessibility, but it's still, I forget the cost. Someone told me it was $700. Someone told me it was $400. I don't really know the cost, and I haven't purchased one yet. But I feel like it's going to be hard to get, the masses to adopt it, because a lot of children, when you hand them, I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of children aren't supposed to have headsets. They say, from 13 and under, headsets not recommended. Okay, so there goes all these kids that you're making these games for. Mm-hmm. Technically, we're not supposed to be sharing this media to them with a headset. We need their brains to develop and their eyes to develop, and it's interesting. It gives you a new responsibility as a creator, because you're not leaving the same impression. You're leaving more of an impression.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you don't want to, or I don't want to put out media. I've been saying this for years. I don't want to put out media that is going to leave a bad effect on the world. I want to put out media that inspires people. I want to put out media that informs people or educates, and I want to help other people have a voice as well, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done a pretty good job with it from the work that I've seen, and it's always been really cool to see you at the absolute forefront of video technology. And you're talking about headsets are going much more, or improving their mobility a lot. You're doing work with the BroomX and volumetric video. We've got augmented reality is like here, it's a thing now. But what else is on the horizon? What else is really exciting you in the video technology space?
in July, we shot a feature film using the Yi Halo. So we had 17 lenses and sensors. We recorded 17 terabytes of data.
Wait. 17 terabytes?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That was just the 360 that was a single 360 camera.
That's a lot of data.
Yeah. Well, they shot another 17 in the standard cinema cameras. So we shot a lot during this film, but like I mentioned before, blending the technology. So we shot the whole thing 3D 360, we shot the whole thing standard cinema, and the editor is creating elements that work together. And you can have them shared in a virtual experience like BroomX. You know, we actually had the premiere at South by at the Capitol Factory. We rented out some space and had about 50 people, watch the film in this pretty large gathering space.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I think for me, the goal is to work on creating content with people who are storytellers first and foremost, because the story is the most important thing. I mean, like, the technology is fun, but without a proper story, we're really just, testing.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, is my tool working, or how can I make it, act this way? So even in 360 video, a lot of people, they ask, what's the best camera? And for the most part, it's the camera you have. It's like, hey, which camera do you have? Okay, we'll use that. If you are looking for specific shots, you might need something that has better stabilization. You might need something that has better resolution or better low light capabilities.
Yeah, but your story is leading you to those decisions, your practice and your experience and your repetitions, and go, oh shit, I really suck at low light. Maybe I'm going to go get something that helps me out in low light.
Yeah.
It's not just going at the very beginning going, I'm just your magic camera.
Yeah. And having the accessories, just because you have a good camera doesn't mean you're going to get the right shot. We were filming for the Special Olympics in February, and I forget the name of the lights we had, but we had some lights that we mounted above the camera, and it gave the talent a nice soft look, rather than just being flat.
Right.
And knowing that there's tools out there, there's a lot of resources online. I would say like Facebook is a huge resource for the VR industry, and a lot of people have been telling me that Twitter is huge now, and I don't really use Twitter, but I'm trying to use it more.
It's noisy. I follow hashtags because that's like how you can find conversations.
Yeah.
Searching by hashtags. That part makes sense to me. But direct engagement with people, like that feels very overwhelming very quickly.
Yeah.
I can passively read it, and that's about it.
I think I tweet once a year or once every few years.
Yeah, I keep a profile updated, but I don't really do anything with it. It just every once in a while publishes something, so it's like, hey, it's not dead, it's a thing. But I don't.
Yeah, I mean, social media, a lot of people are interested in the numbers and how many followers and how many likes. And, I remember there was a time when I wanted to have, 1 million views on a video, or I wanted to have, an impact on an audience bigger than I could imagine. And, what's cool is independent filmmakers can pretty much make the same amount of effect as a studio these days, because the tools are available. It's just about how you use them.
Yeah.
And like Austin has a huge collective of people who are willing to work together. You see the Austin Motion Artist Group come together and make films. That's how I met yourself and Jacob and Brian.
Everyone.
I think that's the biggest lesson that I could share with people is get out there and do it. A filmmaker I worked with in 2013 on a project, he said, Russ, I'm not the best filmmaker, but I get stuff done. And if you can live with that mentality of, I have to work through this project, a lot of times you're working with a deadline, so just because you want to do more to it doesn't mean you can. You have to be able to assess what's possible in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important thing for people to consider. Is like, hey, you may never create your masterpiece, but by completing the work, you confirm that you're a producer, that you're a director, that you're a filmmaker.
Well, and it's interesting. It's like as the technology has become more accessible, the notion of a masterpiece, I think, has faded for a lot of people because it's not a sacred act to get something out. It's just we're making stuff over time, and each one will be better than the last one.
Yeah.
That seems to be the mindset that's replacing, because you and I both came up in the industry when we were younger, and it was harder to get anything made available to an audience.
Mm-hmm.
So it really had to count. Like, you really had to make it your one shot.
Well, yeah, I mean, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all these other platforms have allowed anyone to have a voice, and everyone. And I think it's good. There's a lot of people who don't make responsible media and that are putting out messages that I wouldn't want to put out there, but you kind of got to accept things for what they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think we forget that the drive for social media to retain an audience has made them very receptive to new technologies for video,
mm-hmm.
and made it a lot easier for people to put creative material out in front of folks.
Yeah.
I think we forget that sometimes, yeah.
Well, there's filmmakers like Robert Rodriguez have jumped into VR, and you've got, I think, Doug Lyman created a VR series. One of the things that I found recently being at Tribeca was that there are some masterpieces being created, right? There are people who are spending, a year, 2 years, 4 years of their lives.
Yeah, that's true.
And what I want to do when I see these things, one, I want to celebrate those people. I want to say, hey man, congratulations, because that's quite an accomplishment to have spent and focused that much time and energy and to have it shared on a global stage, right? I think that's what we want. A lot of times we want recognition, and mm-hmm. we want to have a platform to stand on. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually invigorated to start. I want to produce a film abroad, and then I want to produce something locally
mm-hmm.
in this next year. In addition to my work, these are just like personal things that I think could make some noise in the film festival circuit.
Do you have plans already for the two projects?
Well, I have two.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that I think are compelling stories, and it's immersive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you don't want to just make something immersive just because it can be. Like, you want to choose the media because that's the best way to tell the story. Like, I can't go breathe underwater for 6 minutes, but I could take a 360 camera underwater for 6 minutes and hang out. And so, I think using the technology to bring people places that they can't be is one of the key aspects that makes rich media.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people shooting 360 time lapses of the northern lights in Alaska. Like, that guy, all of his videos are just getting crazy numbers, and you're like, of course. I mean, because no one's going to sit out in negative 20 degree weather for 24 hours.
Right.
But
if you can, and you do,
yeah,
it'll be impressive.
Yeah, and I appreciate those people that are doing those things. And you look at people talk about artists using the technology, but I think a lot of it is science. Most of us are learning through application, right? It's not just art. It's like understanding what effect that this has on people, understanding the emotional impact you can create for someone.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the reason I got into media was to save a special moment, right? So it's like, hey, here's this moment that I can recall, and it brings me back to that moment, right? Like through the image or through the video.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Cool. I'm good.